Yo, numerous videos classify United States presidents into tiers: S for superior, then A, B, C, D, and F for worst. The narrator then says who he thinks was best. Though these videos are informative, I prefer to use a different format, a process of elimination until only one man is standing. Now, George Washington was not the first president of all, but first president under the Constitution. However, previous leaders only served 1 year terms and almost nothing is known about them. So I'll evaluate just 45 presidents. First, some had slaves while in office, namely Washington, Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, John Tyler, James Polk, and Zachary Taylor. Andrew Johnson had slaves before office and was pro-slavery. You can't excuse them by saying they were a product of their time, since John Adams, who served from 1797 to 1801, and number 6, John Quincy Adams, were both very anti-slavery. It's not just a personal failing. Citizens see the president as their example. Therefore, eliminate them, bringing us down to 36 possibilities. William Harrison foolishly exposed himself to cold and rain for hours while speaking, causing him to die of pneumonia after a month in office. So he's out. Numerous presidents were suspected of adultery. However, there's only proof of 5 having had ongoing adulterous affairs while in office. They are Warren G. Harding, Franklin D. Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Bill Clinton. It's not just a personal failing, since citizens see the president, like I said before, as an example. And if they wouldn't be faithful to their own wife, I can't see how they'd be faithful to the United States. Therefore, I eliminate them too, bringing us down to 30 possibilities for best. Now, major administrative failings. Ulysses Grant had perhaps the most corrupt cabinet, with the Jay Gould credit mobilier and whiskey ring scandals. He also failed to properly handle the South after the Civil War. So he's out. Woodrow Wilson is responsible for us entering the terrible World War I. And since World War I, coupled with the oppressive Treaty of Versailles, which Wilson headed, were catalysts for World War II, you could say that Wilson was responsible for the terrors and destruction of the greatest war in history. That's besides his harmful liberal so-called progressivism. So he's far out. The Great Depression hit at the beginning of Herbert Hoover's administration, and he completely failed to do anything about it. So he's out. Richard Nixon was involved in the major Watergate scandal and resigned from office before he could be thrown out. Ronald Reagan was involved in the Iran-Contra scandal, selling arms to Iran and using the funds to illegally fund Contra fighters, and his ignoring the AIDS crisis, which allowed AIDS to run rampant and enter our blood supply. George W. Bush mistakenly thought that Iraq harbored weapons of mass destruction, and so launched a war causing over 30,000 U.S. casualties and 200,000 violent deaths of non-military Iraqi citizens. Also, his administration's failure to properly handle the Hurricane Katrina disaster. So we're down to 24. Now for liberal, so-called progressive presidents that took a wrecking ball to Christian, traditional, and wise values. Harry Truman pushed for globalization and denounced countries having independent self-sufficiency. He forced race mixing of the armed forces and federal agencies. And he supported Zionism, which is anti-Christian. Dwight Eisenhower, a globalist and democratic socialist. His forcing the desegregation of schools with armed soldiers led to school systems becoming worse. Income taxes under Eisenhower topped at 92%. Gerald Ford became pro-abortion, and his wife was aggressively pro-abortion, founding the group Pro-Choice America. Gerald did not stand in her way. Ford also favored radical feminism and the Equal Rights Amendment, which goal was to end all natural distinctions between men and women. Barack Obama aggressively promoted immoral LGBT agendas. Obama was pro-Zionist, pro-feminist, pro-race mixing nonsense, higher taxes for dubious causes, and opened the floodgates to illegal Mexican immigrants to leech off the United States. Joe Biden, having been vice president under Obama, as president, supports the same poisonous garbage that Barack Obama did. And numerous presidents fall into several aforementioned bad categories besides one, so we're down to 19. Now those that simply failed to achieve anything of lasting significance, namely Martin Van Buren, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, Rutherford B. Hayes, James A. Garfield, Chester A. Arthur, Grover Cleveland, William McKinley, William H. Taft, Calvin Coolidge, and George Bush Sr. So we're down to 7 potential bests. Among them, John Adams, John Quincy Adams, Abraham Lincoln, Benjamin Harrison, Jimmy Carter, and Donald Trump. However, ta-da! Theodore T.R. Roosevelt. He hated the name Teddy, though. His most noted accomplishments are commissioning the Panama Canal, which allows us to ship items from our east to west coasts and vice versa much faster and cheaper, since ships need not travel around the tip of South America, and more can be shipped because less will spoil in the shorter time. Its use allows U.S. exporters better access to foreign markets and lowers the cost of imported goods, thus reducing inflation. Via this shortcut, our Navy is strengthened since naval vessels can pass from one coast to another and aid ships from opposite coasts if there's trouble. The Panama Canal allows a better worldwide communication system because of submarine fiber optic cables running through it. TR's grand overarching plan was his Square Deal, a tripartite domestic program encompassing his 3 major goals: conservation of natural resources, control of corporations, and consumer protection. Note, many today realize the vital importance of protecting the environment. Some even proposed a Green New Deal, but President Roosevelt represented the Green Old Deal, which was also economically efficient. Theodore Roosevelt did more for the environment and God's green earth than all other presidents combined. Known as the Great Conservationist, TR set aside 150 million acres, that's 600,000 square kilometers, for national forests under public protection. He also established 5 national parks and the United States Forest Service. Additionally, he established our first wildlife refuge, the Pelican Island National Wildlife Refuge, followed by 50 other bird reserves, havens designed to protect bird species, and 4 national game reserves. TR was also known as the Trust Buster. A trust is similar to a monopoly, which is a single, completely dominant company within a sector. Such companies would ruin needy citizens by providing lousy products and or services for extremely high prices since there's no competition. Trusts try to evade monopoly laws since they are several companies combining forces, which essentially amounts to a united monopoly. Besides breaking up a railroad monopoly, TR enforced 44 antitrust suits. He helped workers with safety regulations and labor laws, and helped the poor with wage and tax laws. He also created the United States Department of Commerce and Labor. TR dedicated himself to something of utmost importance to all Americans: their health and lives. Citizens were abused by companies with things like food products filled with sawdust and babies being poisoned with milk diluted with dangerous chemicals to cut costs. People were inadvertently eating meat that was picked off dirty company floors and bought worthless or dangerous medicines promoted by quack doctors. So Roosevelt created vital edicts that culminated in the Food and Drug Administration. These prohibited adulterating food with fillers, concealing damage using anything harmful to health, or using filthy, decomposed, or spoiled substances. See Square Deal Wikipedia. And President T. Roosevelt was devoutly Christian. He uniformly enforced New York's Sunday closing laws in favor of churchgoers. TR went to church every Sunday, and during a gasoline shortage, he chose to walk 3 miles to church and back instead of driving to avoid using up the needed supply. Stay tuned for a future video wherein I compare TR with other presidents often considered the best. Take care.